we going to see? What is the jury going to see on these slides?
So up in the upper right-hand corner is going to be kind of a key. So all of the data from the different sources is color-coded. So anything that's red is associated with those AT&T records for Joseph. Anything that's pink is associated with the iPhone evidence item 14. Everything that is blue is associated with the T-Mobile records for Emily. As there was only one Facebook location, it is also colored blue, but it is not listed on here. All of the locations of interest are designated by icons. The legend is over on the right-hand side to show what those icons are in reference to. Again, this is Google Earth. This is the program that I use to look at these maps. Up in the upper left-hand corner is going to be a timeline slider. This is going to move throughout the presentation. It's going to represent the time frame that is being displayed on the map at that given time. For the most part, this is going to be in about a 5-minute increment, but there's a couple of times where it's going to fluctuate throughout the exhibit.
Okay. And looking at the right side, the A, B, C, D, just so the record is clear, they say Bass Residence, Lang Residence, Bear Run Road, and Lemons Residence. How were those determined to be locations of interest?
Through my review of the case file information.
Okay. And you mapped the location data or information from these data sources. So what does it look like when a cell site is used?
So down at the bottom of the screen is a snippet of what the original record looks like. This particular one is from the AT&T records that we can see because it's designated by the red in color. Above it is a snippet or a screenshot of the corresponding cell site list. So when I'm looking at these records, over on the left-hand side is going to be the transactional information. This is a voice call that's showing up here on the screen. There's a date, a time, a to, a from, and how long it lasts. There's going to be a call bubble that associates that same information. The difference is that it's going to be converted into local time, whereas the original record is in time code universal, so it is converted. In the middle there is the IMEI. This is like the serial number of the device. So this is the serial number of the device that was using the AT&T network. During my analysis, I did coordinate this with item number 14. To show that it is the same device. For every cell site, there's going to be an identifier, and then there's that location like I previously testified to that we know the locations of them. The location of the cell site is going to be represented by that push pin on the map. That's where that cell site is physically located. There's a line that kind of goes up the middle there. That's called the azimuth. That's just basically the direction that cell site is pointing. These cell sites are pointed in, and if you imagine like a clock, they're pointed at an orientation that's in degrees. And then the red shaded area, this is called the radio frequency horizontal plane. This is something that my tool, Accurate Tracks, will actually map out as well. This is the estimated handoff area of that cell site. This is not coverage. This is the area in which the device likely was in order to use that cell site before it would hand off to another cell site for that better quality signal.
Okay. And what does distance to tower look like?
So distance to tower is that ranging information that I talked about earlier. This is where the network is trying to figure out where that device is at any given time. And it's measured in a variety of different ways. But in this, at the bottom, we have that screenshot of the original record. This is T-Mobile as designated by the blue. That push pin there is, again, that location of that cell site, where it is on the map. Our azimuth is depicted on here, which way that cell site was pointed at that time. And then there's a distance from the cell site. In this case, in this example, it's 3.01 miles away from the cell site. That's what that arc represents. That arc is 3.01 miles away from the cell site. So for distance to tower, what I'm looking at is that device is somewhere along that arc.
So what does the location information from the device look like on a map?
So from the device itself, it's going to be colored in pink. This is an example of a trip. So this is where the device said that a trip was started, and there's going to be that call box with that time that it started, and then it's going to move over to where the trip ended. There's no location accuracy rating for these. It's just a singular coordinate point and the time that the trip started, the trip ended. With these trips, there typically is going to be a significant location visit that corresponds with it. And that is the device saying that I was in this location from this time to this time. So there's a start and an end to the significant locations. There's going to be a couple other types of location information that came from the device, but it's going to look the same. It's going to be a dot on the map.
Okay. So I think those are all the things you said that the jury was going to see. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you conducted your analysis in this case, what did you focus on?
I focused on a timeline of events.
Okay. And is that depicted in your exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. So starting with October 15th, can you walk us through your analysis? It looks like the first grouping of time is from 8:31 in the morning through 3:47 in the afternoon.
Yes. So what I saw doing my analysis beginning around 8:30 in the morning is Joseph's device was using that AT&T network, and it was down in that Northfield, New Hampshire area. We can see that the Bass residence fell within the H-plane, or that estimated handoff area of the cell sites that were getting utilized. I saw that it kind of bounced back and forth between a couple of cell sites, again, looking for that best quality signal, but staying pretty much the same. Emily's device had that distance to tower, and in this example here, when it's happening, this is about 11:37, the distance to tower actually crosses. And when I see that, it's called multilateration, the device is somewhere in close proximity to where that device is crossing at. And I saw that that happened in near proximity to the Bass residence. As I continued my analysis, I saw that kind of a pattern emerged between these devices and how they were utilizing their respective cellular networks. Joseph's device kind of was bouncing around the same ones. Emily's device was bouncing around the same ones. About 12:41 is when the evidence item 14, or Joseph's iPhone, started a trip. And that was in close proximity to the Bass residence. There's no location accuracy for that one. It's just that coordinate location. As my analysis continued through, I could see that there was a change in cell site locations for Joseph's device. Emily's device kind of stayed in that same area, but we had that trip stop, or that trip end, for Joseph's iPhone. When that trip ended, there was a corresponding significant location visit. In this particular case, it went from about 12:52 to 12:54 on the 15th. And as I examined it further to see what was down in the area of where that significant location visit occurred, I saw that it was actually a Market Basket shopping center down in that area. So after that significant location visit ended, a new trip was started. And moving forward, I saw that the device moved back to the area of the Bass residence. And that cell site information, again, I kind of saw the changes in the cell sites, and it went back to that earlier pattern that I had seen previously when item 14 was in the area of the Bass residence. This significant location visit was from 13:08 until 15:45 on the 15th. So I saw that that device had been there for a while, and going through the cell site activity and how the cellular network was pretty much the pattern that I saw. These devices weren't moving around. It was the same cell site usage, and I saw the same network activity for both of the devices. And that lasted until about 1545. Around 1545 to 1547 is when I saw a change. Over on the left-hand side, I can actually see that distance to tower has a distinctive change as those distances got shorter. And that occurred at the same time that a trip was started on item 14. So in my analysis, I saw this as the beginning of movement.
Okay. And so were you able to determine where the devices went at approximately 3:47 on Friday the 15th?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like the next timeline you have is from 3:47 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And so you're going to sort of do the same thing you just did, but for that 3-hour time frame?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So once I saw that movement start, then I began to see both of the devices had a shift in cell site usage over to the west. And this is clear to me that this is now devices that are moving. As they continued to move west, it got a little busy. There was a lot of activity. Depends on the area that they're in for why there might be more. But overall, they're definitely shifting to the west. A little bit, about 4:29-ish. Item 14 had a trip that ended, and with that trip ending, there was also that significant location visit that lasted from 1629 to 1633. These also fell within the H-planes of the cell site usage at the time, corroborating everything. When I went to examine it further to see what was in the area of that significant location visit, I saw that there was a gas station. I believe that this was in the Andover, New Hampshire area. As I continued with my analysis, I watched that cell site usage continue to change. It was a clear pattern of movement between both devices as they started to move to the west. There was a trip that was started on item 14, and then I saw the cell site usage reflect that those devices were moving in the same pattern of travel. They went up to the Lebanon, New Hampshire area. That trip that had started previously is now ended. And I can see that that trip occurs, the coordinate location for that trip occurs in close proximity to where the distance to tower was. A significant location visit was triggered from 1722 until 1729 hours. And when I examined the area further, because both devices were in that same area, I could see it was a shopping center. The location information was kind of in that whole parking lot. There's a Target there, there was a Supercuts. So that significant location visit continued for a couple more minutes. And I could see that the distance to tower for Emily's device was still maintaining that same area. And then a trip was started on item 14. As my analysis continued for this time frame, we're now around like the 1730 hours, I can see the cell site usage for both devices showed that they were traveling. And they were showing the same patterns of travel and movement in the same areas. At about 6:45 or 1845, the trip ends for item 14.
Okay, thank you. Just looking, we're looking at a lot of data here. Your testimony is that the devices are in the same area, but they don't always look like they are. Can you explain to the jury why they might be slightly different, in slightly different spots if they're together?
So the cell site network is based on the respective carrier, AT&T and T-Mobile in this case. They have their cell sites put in different places. So the physical location of the cell sites might not be the same. Sometimes they're co-located, sometimes they're different. But when I'm conducting my analysis, I'm again looking for that pattern, and I can see that the general pattern is that they're in the same areas at the same time.
Okay, and in this case, one of the carriers was it Joseph's, was AT&T?
Yes,
And Emily's was T-Mobile.
yes.
Right, okay. And you never analyzed Emily's phone in this case, is that right?
Correct,
We didn't, because it was never provided to you.
correct.
Okay, so this trip appears to have ended at approximately 6:45 on Friday, the 15th. Where are the devices now?
So when I look at this now, about 6:45, that trip has ended. There's a significant location visit. I can see that significant location visit falls along Emily's distance to tower, again, showing that they're in the same area. This visit was from 6:45 until 6:57. And when I went to examine the area a little bit further, this is the Waterbury, Vermont area. And I can see that Crossroads Deli is in that same area of where that device was.
Okay, and are you able to tell where it goes from here?
Yes. So they're there for a little bit of time. When that significant location visit ends, then we'll see that trip start, or I saw that trip start. And then there's going to be a shift in the cell site usage. So I can see the trip started. And when I'm looking for movement, again, I'm looking for that cell site location usage, and I saw that shift happen over to the west now. I saw that these devices then were utilizing a cell site over in the Bolton, Waterbury-ish area, but together the H-planes and that distance to tower were showing that they were in the same area, and that trip ended falling within all of the cellular network data.
Okay, and we see that there is a C in the kind of middle of this red space, and that is Bear Run Road, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to, do you have anything else on that point?
Yes.
Okay.
So at about 1919 is when that trip ended and that significant location visit started. When I start to look in further, I can see that that falls along Bear Run Road. That significant location visit for Joseph's device went from 1919 on the 15th until 12:04 the next day on the 16th. So overnight hours.
And what happened with the devices in the area of Bear Run in that time frame?
So they kind of kept showing the same cell site usage throughout the evening. Again, I'm looking for those patterns, and I'm showing that devices are just not moving around. At 2013 was when Emily's Facebook account had her last message, and so her distance to tower at that time was consistent with that Bear Run Road area. They're not moving around. The cell site usage just kept going on the same and same. At 2139 or 939 is an outgoing message from Joseph's device to the phone number ending in 7611. But the cell site information is still showing that these devices aren't moving around. They're still in the same area. They're utilizing the network in the same way. And that continues at 10:14 or 22:14 hours is the singular Facebook location information that I had, which when mapped also indicated that the device was in the Bear Run Road area. It fell along the distance to tower arcs from Emily's T-Mobile call detail records. So all of this together is just showing that corroboration between multiple different sources, which is what I use in my analysis. And that same pattern continued up and through midnight.
Okay, so we are now at midnight on October 15th, Friday, October 15th. So it looks like the next timeline event is October 16th from midnight through 3:40 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what happened with the devices starting at midnight on the 16th?
So the timeline slider is actually going a little slow now. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow. The reason it's going slow is because as I'm going through my analysis, I noticed that I stopped having cell site information for Joseph's device. When I looked into the item 14, I found that at midnight 01, the iPhone was powered off. Emily's device continued to utilize the T-Mobile network. Again, I'm looking at those same arcs. They're static. They're not moving around. They're not changing cell sites. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning is the last time that Emily's device connected with the T-Mobile network. So I went a little bit of time. I did not have any cell site usage for either device. And this continued until about 2:10 in the morning, or excuse me, 1:35 in the morning, it was powered back on. There's a brief little amount of time that it was roaming on another network, so I still didn't have anything mappable until it hit the AT&T network. Once it hit the AT&T network, I saw it was utilizing the same cell sites that it had been before. Again, looking at that pattern over and over again, seeing it the same way that I had been seeing it previously. And then at 2:10, the device was powered back off again. So once it gets powered off, I have nothing mappable. That device is not communicating with the network. Emily's device is no longer communicating with the network, and it just continued that way until 3:39 when item 14, or Joseph's device, was powered back on.
In all the data that you reviewed for the full 4 days, did you ever see any other times where the device was powered off or on?
No.
It's just between midnight and 3:40 a.m. on Friday night into Saturday morning?
Yes.
After item 14 and Joseph's phone was powered back on and the data resumed, what happened to the device? It looks like the next 3:40 a.m. to approximately noon.
So once the device was powered back on, it showed that same pattern of cell site usage. So it's not moving around, it's not changing cell sites, it's just showing that same pattern. At 7:48, there was an outgoing message from item 14 to the phone number ending in 7611. Again, knowing that cell site usage is showing the same pattern, the device hasn't changed its location while it was sending that message. Moving forward, at 8:02, there was an outgoing message again to the 7611 number from the item 14. During that time, that cell site usage is showing that consistency. The timeline slider is going to open up, and the reason for this is because up until about 12:03, that device was not moving around enough to see any movement. So I opened it up to be able to see that it's a static pattern. This is also during the time that, from my events that I analyzed, that this is when they had gone to Maxie's restaurant, and Maxie's fell within the estimated handoff range, or that H-plane, of the cell sites that are being utilized. But there's not enough information for me to be able to narrow down the specific location of the device at this time. It's just that H-plane.
Okay, so from your next timeline is around noon on the 16th, Saturday the 16th through 7 p.m. Can you tell the jury what the device was doing during that time? So
at about noon 03 is when I started to see movement. There was a trip that was started from item 14. And then I saw that the cell sites that get utilized are going to shift. And I'm going to see that movement as they kind of move up towards the Franklin County area. And that trip is going to end. Again, that was during my analysis, a clear change from that static pattern of cell site usage to that movement. The significant location visit that happens is from 1301 until 1906, and I saw that occurred in near the location B, which is the Lang residence. So that device was there for several hours at the Lang residence. So during my analysis then, I started to look to see what the network activity was during that time. And I could see that pattern start to emerge again of just kind of the same cell site usage over and over again. At 109 or 1309 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And I could see, again, that cell site usage now. That H plane encompasses the Lang residence. So everything's kind of corroborating itself. There was an outgoing message to Emily's number at 120 or 1320. So looking at that cell site usage, I'm kind of seeing the same cell site location getting used over and over. At 152 is another outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And it's designated in pink to show that that is the source of that information. At 202 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And I haven't seen during this time while I was doing my analysis, I didn't see a change in cell site usage. There's a second message to 2955 at 202 to Emily's number. I'm seeing that same cell site usage reflective of the Franklin County area. I don't have anything more specific at this point, but I do have that significant location visit. At 209 is an outgoing call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. See that device is just utilizing that same cell site location. It's covering the Franklin County area. I knew from the significant location visit that the phone thought it was still in the same place. At 2:35 was an outgoing call to Emily's number from Joseph's number. At 2:57 is an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number. And that cell site usage is showing that same pattern. I know that significant location visit is still in effect right now, so that device is not moving around. And then at a little after 3 is when item 14 had a new type of location information that I was able to map, and this is a parked car location. And this was at 1503. There's no location accuracy, but the coordinate location fell close to the Lang residence up on Meadowbrook Road. So it's all consistent. This is that pattern that I'm looking for when I do my analysis, is everything's kind of showing the same location. The timeline slider kind of speeds up now because it's just the same pattern over and over and over again. And then at 6:55 is an outgoing call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. Around that same time is another parked car location. So that iPhone thought that it had a parked car location. I can see that coordinate point fell within the H plane of that voice call, and it is near the Lang residence. And then kind of moving forward in time, from item 14, I also saw some pictures that were taken, and the data from the pictures, it's called the EXIF data, show that they were created on the 16th at 1859 or 6:59, and they were of tattoos.
Okay, thank you. Does the device, so this is ending at 6:59 p.m. on Saturday night, does the device stay at the Lang's residence overnight, or does it move again?
It moves.
Okay, so where does the device go next? It looks like you have 6:59 p.m. to 8:38 as the next group.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
So initially, it's using that same cell site, and then there's a trip that's started on item 14. And as I was doing my analysis, I could see that during that trip, then I saw a change in the cell site usage. The H-planes are now oriented in a different way, so that's showing a device that has now moved. There is also the end of the trip, as well as a significant location visit. That visit occurred from 1915 until 2032. And when I examined it further to see what was in the area where that significant location visit occurred, I could see that it was down in St. Albans, and Twig's Restaurant, Gastropub, was in that area of where that significant location visit occurred. So when I saw that trip happen, I also saw that change in cell sites corroborating that information for device movement. Moving forward in time, there was that change in the cell sites. At 2009 was an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number. And then when that significant location visit ended, a new trip was started for item 14. The coordinate location was down in that same area of where the significant location visit was. And then that trip ended and another significant location visit started. And I could see that significant location visit was again in the Meadowbrook area. And that one went from 2038 on the 16th overnight until 1036 on the 17th. So that device stayed in that same area overnight.
Okay, so we are now on Sunday, October 17th. And is there a text message from Joseph's phone to Emily's the next morning?
Yes. So at 8:37, that device was using that same cell site that I saw in the overnight hours, consistent that it hadn't moved. And then moving forward to 8:45 in the morning is an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number.
And that text was sent while at the Lang's area of the Lang's residence. Is that correct?
The significant location visit was still in the area of Meadowbrook.
Okay. And at some point, did the device start to move away from that area?
Yes.
What time did that occur?
Around 10:36.
Okay. So it looks like the next block of time is 10:36 to 12:04?
Yes.
So 10:36 a.m. until around noon on Sunday, October 17th.
Yes.
Okay. Tell the jury what happened with the device in that time.
So at 10:36 is when a trip was started from item 14. And through my analysis, I could see that that device then traveled south based on the cell sites that were utilized. It left the Franklin County area, traveled south, and went down into the Burlington area. And I could see those cell sites started to kind of congregate in the Burlington area. The trip ends, and then a significant location visit was initiated. When I looked a little bit further, I could see that significant location visit fell within the H-plane of the cell sites that were getting utilized. This visit went from about 11:14 until 11:58 in the morning. And when I examined it further to see what was down in that area, it was Burlington area. And I could see that Muddy Waters was in that area of where that significant location visit occurred. So moving forward, I saw the cell site usage being consistent, staying in the Burlington area. moving forward. And then when a trip ended and another significant location visit started, it was a couple streets over, but still in the Burlington area. And this this visit lasted from 12:04 until 13:19 on the 17th. And when I went to look further to see what was in the area of where this significant location visit was, I could see that Henry's Diner was in that area. And so overall, while the device was down in the Burlington area, those locations that came out of item 14 were consistent with the cell site usage.
Okay. And at some point, does the device leave the Burlington area?
Yes.
And which direction does it go?
It actually went to the South Burlington area.
Okay. And then does it eventually go back up towards St. Albans?
Yes.
Okay. And what time does that trip start?
At 14:03 or 2:03.
Okay. So the next block of time is 2:03 p.m. through 8:12 p.m. on, again, Sunday, October 17th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could take us through starting at 2:03 p.m.
So at 2:03 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. I've got cell site usage down in the South Burlington area. And then that trip is started in that same area. Again, those H planes are consistent with that device information. And then I could see that those cell sites, again, showed that that device traveled back up to the Franklin County area, because the cell sites that are getting utilized are changing in their locations. The trip ended, and then a significant location visit started at the time that that trip ended. And this visit went from 14:57 until 15:09 on the 17th. And when I examined further to see what was down in that area of where that visit occurred, I could see that this was the Hannaford's Plaza in St. Albans. And so again, I can see that that visit fell within the H plane. So everything is showing corroboration between the different sources of location information. A new trip was started, or will be started. And I can see those H planes there. That cell site information starts to change. There's a shift. And then it goes over, kind of cell sites over on the eastern side. That trip is ended. And a significant location visit is initiated. And that significant location visit, again, is down on Meadowbrook. And this visit lasted from 15:20 on the 17th until 15:32 the next day on October 18th.
Okay, so during that time frame, the device is not moving.
The cell site activity was repeated.
Okay, is anything happening
time.
on the phone during that time?
Yes. So as we move forward in time, at 7:59 to 8 o'clock, there were actually 3 outgoing calls from Joseph's number to Emily's number, as well as an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. That cell site usage is the same as what I had seen previously. So it's just using the same cell sites over and over again. And then at 8:12 was an outgoing message from item 14 to Emily's number.
Okay. So that is ending at 8:12. It looks like the next block is midnight. Is there anything of interest between 8:12 p.m. and midnight occurring on the phone?
It was the same cell site usage over and over.
Okay. And so we are now moving to midnight on the 18th, so Sunday night into Monday morning, from midnight to 10:25 a.m. Was there any activity on the phone during that time?
Yes. So at midnight 05 on the 18th is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And this is all occurring during that significant location visit that was on Meadowbrook. The cell site usage is showing the same pattern. At 1:05 is another outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14. And then moving forward, again, I saw the same cell site usage, and I say that over and over again because these are the patterns that I look for in my analysis. At 4:09 and 4:10 are outgoing voice calls from Joseph's number to Emily's number. They're utilizing those same cell sites. That pattern continued. A device is not moving around enough that it needs to hand off to new cell sites. At 9:06 is an outgoing message from item 14 to 2955. Also at 9:06, a couple seconds later, was an outgoing voice call from Joseph's number to Emily's number. This is still all occurring with that significant location visit. That was still going on. At 10:25 is an outgoing message to Emily's number from item 14.
Okay, is that the last, in that span of time, is that the last activity?
Yes.
Okay. So it appears that the next block of time doesn't start until 3:32 that same afternoon. So from 10:25 a.m. to 3:32 p.m., was there no important or no activity on the device?
It was that same pattern of cell site usage.
Okay. And so the next block of time, we are now on Monday afternoon, October 18th at 3:32. Does the device move or have further activity?
Yes, it starts to move.
Okay, show us that.
So when that trip was started at about 3:32, it was started in the area of the Lang residence. It was on the Meadowbrook. And then that cell site usage displayed that movement. I could see that it started to travel southeast, and it kept handing off to different cell sites, and then that trip ended. That ending trip, there was also a significant location visit that was triggered. That went from 1618 until 1637. That visit fell within the H-plane of the cell site that was being utilized at that time. When I examined it further, I could see that there was the Maple Fields that's in Waterbury, that's Waterbury Stowe Road, that was in the area of where that significant location visit occurred. When that significant location visit ended, after a couple of minutes, then a new trip was started, and that device began moving again. And I could see that that device started handing off to multiple cell sites again. I could see that movement as it traveled southeast, and it went down through the White River Junction, Lebanon area, and continued down into New Hampshire. When that trip ended, there was a significant location visit for item 14. It fell within the H-plane of the cell site that was getting utilized at that time. This particular visit went from 1747 until 1758. When I examined the area further to see what was down in the area where this visit occurred, I could see that there was a gas station. Down in this area. So that movement pattern was pretty clear to me. Definitely a change from that static pattern that I had seen earlier. And all of my data was being corroborated. The device then started to move again. And as I watched those cell sites start to move and hand off, there was another device location information that's going to pop up that falls within those H-planes. And that is sourced to Find My on the iPhone. It is not a stationary event like a parking event or a significant location visit. It's just a latitude and longitude that is sourced to the Find My. So the device ended up traveling over towards that Northfield area, getting into the general area around 6:25. And then it continued to utilize multiple cell sites. And then at about 6:35 is when I started to see the cell site pattern that I had seen back on the 15th, when that device was in the area of the Bass residence. And that was the pattern that stuck out to me. That lasted up until about 8:15 is when I saw a change in that pattern occur. And then there was a new item 14 location information that occurred. This one was a parking event, a parked car, and this again was at 2015. And when I examined the area further to see what was in the area, there's no location accuracy for this one, it's just a latitude and a longitude. I looked down further and I could see that there was a gas station in this area.
Okay, so this is still, we're back around 8:15 p.m. In the area of the Bass residence, is that correct?
It had moved away, the pattern had changed, and that parking car location was in the area of the gas station at 8:15.
Okay, so it looks like you have a next timeline of 8:15 through 11:19 p.m. Was there significant activity during that time?
Yes.
Okay. And did the device stay in New Hampshire or did it leave?
It began to travel and move.
Okay, so you can show us that.
Again, starting around 8:15 is when I saw that change in the pattern to show that device movement. I saw the cell site usage, again, was showing that it just was handing off to multiple cell sites as that device was moving around, traveled up north. Now it's in the Burlington area, and it continued north back up towards the Franklin County area. We're at about 11 o'clock at night. But this time I saw a change from that pattern that I had seen earlier. Now it was utilizing cell sites further east. This was a different pattern than what I had seen back when it was in the Meadowbrook area. This was at 2319 was an item 14. This is again a parked car location, and this fell within proximity of the Lemons residence. That's the icon D there, showing that was consistent with that change in cell site information that I had seen.
Okay, so the device showed an arrival at the Lemons residence at approximately 11:19 p.m. on Monday, the 18th.
There was a parked car location at 2319.
Okay, at the Lemons residence, or near the Lemons residence. Okay. Is there, looks like quite a big jump. Is there mappable data from 11:19 through 3:02 a.m.?
No.
Okay. And why might that be, or why is that?
The device was roaming on different wireless networks or cellular network carriers, and that's not anything that I could map from the information that I had.
Meaning there wasn't any cell service? Is that?
There was not AT&T. The device was not able to communicate with the AT&T network. It had to go to a different network in order to have service.
Okay. And so when does the mapped data resume?
At 3:02 on the 19th.
Okay. And can you show us, it looks like 3:02 a.m. to 4:07 a.m. is the final timeline. Can you show us what happens during that time?
So when the AT&T data resumed, the cell site usage resumed, it was that same cell site that it had left off at previously, over on the eastern side, and the Lemons residence fell within the H-plane. And my analysis saw that there was that shift in the cell site usage over to the west, went back over into the St. Albans area, and then at about 4:06 is when a cache location started. And this is that raw location data that I previously talked about, that the phone knows where it is. And that cache location, when I examined further to see what was in the area of where that cache location indicated that the device was, and I saw that that was the St. Albans barracks for the Vermont State Police.
Okay. And what happens with the device after that?
It stayed in that same area. The cache locations were consistent with the St. Albans barracks, and the cell site usage overlaid where those cache locations were.
Okay. And are you aware of the circumstances that led the device to end up at the St. Albans Police Barracks?
It's my understanding that it was in a Jeep that was transported from the Lemons residence to the barracks.
Okay. Is that the final timeline that you have?
Yes.
So there was no other mappable data after that?
For this, there was mappable data. It just was that same pattern in the barracks.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions that I have.
I have no questions.